Do empaths exist? Is it the case that empaths exist, or are they some imaginary creature akin to the tooth fairy, unicorns, or the Easter Bunny? To help people understand the range of behaviours within the context of the narcissistic dynamic, I categorise people into 4 distinct groups. The narcissists, further divided into lesser, mid-range, greater, and the ultra. All of those in the narcissist group have narcissistic personality disorder. There is no emotional empathy. They all manipulate. Within our group, there are a range of other behaviours which I have explained in separate videos, which isn't the purpose of this recording today. We then have the group which are narcissistic individuals, but they are not narcissists. Low emotional empathy, low empathic traits, high narcissistic traits. Then the largest group, the normals. Empathic traits, narcissistic traits. Considerable emotional empathy, but for a small radius of individuals around them. Their children, siblings, parents, friends, colleagues, maybe a neighbour. But outside of that wider circle, no. These individuals are looking to get through life the best they can, and therefore aren't the type that would routinely go around helping strangers. Indeed, they could be unpleasant to a stranger because they don't have any immediate emotional empathy for them. And then the empath group. The empath group have both narcissistic and empathic traits, but their empathic traits are always stronger than their narcissistic ones. Those empathic traits keep the narcissistic ones in check. The empath group have considerable emotional empathy for a wide range of individuals. The empath is somebody that has a range of empathic traits, and these are evidenced not by what they talk about, but what they do. These empathic traits are those such as being a love devotee, exhibiting compassion, exhibiting decency, having a strong moral compass, and others besides. Now, these empathic traits are also to be found within normal people, but in lower amounts, and not necessarily all of the empathic traits are present with a normal person. Similarly, with narcissistic individuals, they may only have a handful of empathic traits and they're not particularly strong. Narcissists don't have any, although of course we fake them. But with the empath, they have a variety of empathic traits which are varying in strength, but at least moderate in strength and upwards, usually far higher. And those empathic traits can be seen in the things that they do, the way that they behave, and not what they talk about. Those empathic traits are evident in their wider circle of empathy that they exhibit. For instance, they will demonstrate compassion by looking after a stranger who has fallen down in the street. They will undertake charitable work to aid people that they have never met. They behave with decency towards other individuals, strangers and acquaintances as well as others. There is a whole raft of these empathic traits and examples that fit into everyday behaviour to demonstrate that the individual is an empath. As mentioned, these empathic traits can appear within narcissistic people and normal people, but they are not as prevalent, they are not as numerous, and the instances of their appearance are not as great as they are within the empath. Understand, empaths are not saints. They're human beings, and they make mistakes. They make mistakes as a consequence of 2 factors. The first is their addiction to the narcissist, something I shall return to shortly. This creates emotional thinking, which causes them to use flawed logic, and therefore take steps which are not in their best interests. For instance, continuing to try and make a narcissist see that they are wrong. When, of course, the narcissist, where unaware, is incapable of seeing that, or where an aware narcissist will not accept it anyway, because of the transference of power. And the emotional thinking causes the empath to embark upon that fool's errand. The other aspect appertains to where there is an erosion of their emotional empathy and their empathic traits caused by an external stressor. There are lots of different external stressors, and the most common one, of course, in the narcissistic dynamic is where the empath is being abused by the narcissist. That means that the victim, the empathic victim, will lash out. This is where the empathic victim might return silent treatments to the narcissist, may even become physically violent with the narcissist, be argumentative, look to cause problems for the narcissist in some way, and is often responsible for individuals seeking information about how can I control the narcissist, how can I make the narcissist do what I want, how can I make the narcissist suffer forever, and such similar titles, all arising as a consequence of elevated emotional thinking and the erosion of their emotional empathy. Accordingly, the empath is no saint. The exhibition of their empathy is part of what makes them. And this is demonstrated almost by an invisible force which guides their behaviour without them thinking about it. They naturally recognise boundaries. So, for instance, they don't just walk into somebody's house uninvited. They don't steal. They don't take the food off somebody's plate without asking, "May I try one of your French fries first, please?" They don't routinely go around insulting people, starting fights. Their response, where provoked, may result in a fierce reaction in certain instances, but more usually it is a conciliatory approach that is adopted in order to try and problem solve, their empathic trait of the desire to heal and fix coming to the fore. The empathic trait of decency, trying to do the right thing to resolve the conflict. They also exhibit self-regulating empathy, where they consciously think, I'm not going to do this because I wouldn't like it done to me, or I'm not going to do that because that isn't the right and fair thing to do. And they're guided by that. Their decisions are made through this lens of emotional empathy. It isn't perfect, and there are times where mistakes will be made, as I say, as a consequence of external stressors and the presence of emotional thinking. But this is what regulates their behaviour. And it goes beyond that which is exhibited by narcissistic and normal people, and hence demonstrates the existence of the empath. The other aspect is that there is the presence of the addiction. Empaths are addicted to my kind, the narcissists. This is evidenced by a range of behaviours which results in them continuing to act in a particular way which is actually detrimental to their interest, although they don't realise it. Over time, of course, and the application of my work, they become aware of the presence of the addiction so that they can take steps to address it. But the presence of the addiction is a hallmark of the empath. This does not exist with narcissists. It doesn't exist with narcissistic people, and it doesn't exist with normals. This is because it is evidenced through the relationship with the narcissist. I'll give you a few examples which demonstrate the existence of the empath with regard to a different dynamic between the other classifications of people concerning involvement with the narcissist. So let's take, for example, some narc-on-narc action. There's no emotional empathy evident. Of course, two unaware narcissists will believe that they have emotional empathy, but they do not. The relationship between narcissist and narcissist will have various permutations, and there are separate videos about when narcissists collide, and there'll be more added to take into account the different categorizations. But for the purposes of this video, the main point to understand is that when there is an involvement between narcissist and narcissist, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, it results in a chaotic relationship. Why? Because you have two individuals that want the same thing from the other, but they actually become diametrically opposed. A needs to control B, B needs to control A. Sometimes that control can be obtained For instance, A is unpleasant towards B, B retreats. A believes that he's got control, B believes she has control through withdrawal, and therefore there is an uneasy truce, but it doesn't last long. Those two unaware narcissists will invariably keep bumping up against one another because they will repeatedly seek to assert control over the other and therefore threaten the control of the other, resulting in a response from that individual's narcissism to try and then reject that threat to control. What does this all equate to? Chaotic, turbulent, up and down relationships, where ultimately they don't last that long. Where it's involving lessers, they are particularly vitriolic and fiery. Mid-rangers, there'll be periods of calm, and then there'll be periods of fallout and often retreat. But the dynamic is evident in terms of the chaotic nature of it. Where you have a narcissistic individual that is involved with the narcissist, they don't have any addiction, nor do they seek to control the narcissist. Invariably, they will break off pretty quickly, because their own high narcissistic traits mean that their particular needs will be offended by the narcissist's need for control. Similarly, they won't submit to the control of the narcissist, resulting in that narcissist devaluing very quickly, disengaging very quickly. And again, that relationship will be immensely turbulent and then fall apart. Because the narcissistic individual has no need for control over the narcissist, they will walk away far quicker. And although the narcissist may try to draw them back in by asserting control, the narcissistic individual having no addiction to colour their thought to cause them to fall prey to emotional thinking means that they will walk away from that relationship. Similarly, the relationship between a narcissist and a normal is one whereby it won't last particularly long. Normals can get ensnared, but more usually, for instance, while they're being love-bombed, although they may not realise they are dealing with a narcissist, what they then do is they recognise, this man, he's texting me all of the time, I haven't got time for that, it's too much, it's over the top, I'm out of here. They don't know that they're dealing with a narcissist, but their lack of addiction and the absence of emotional thinking means that they just recognise this as an unhealthy, unnecessary and unpleasant behaviour, and they don't want any of it, so they walk. Sometimes, if the love bombing is less intense, they do become ensnared, but as soon as devaluation occurs in some form, they're out. Basically, nobody treats me like that, gone. They don't want to get to the bottom of why they're being treated that way. They're not interested in trying to resolve the conflict. They don't want to get back to the golden period. It's, nobody treats me like this, no thank you, and they're out. Why? There is no addiction to keep them in place. The different relationship exists entirely when it comes to the relationship between the narcissist and the empath. The empath has an addiction to the narcissist, and this manifests by, first of all, not seeing the red flags during seduction. So whereas somebody who is narcissistic, a narcissist, or a normal is more likely to be ensnared, the empath is, because their emotional thinking gets hold of relevant traits, for instance, their love devotee trait, corrupts it and causes them to believe that they found this wonderful, loving person, and they miss all of the red flags that are associated with the approach of a narcissist. The addiction allows them to be ensnared. The empath is the easiest individual to be ensnared. Furthermore, when devaluation occurs, where it's the intimate partner primary source with the sustained devaluation, or where it is the instance of corrective devaluations or the shelving dynamic that occurs, if that was done to somebody who wasn't an empath, they would walk, object, remove themselves, either immediately or fairly quickly thereafter. The empath doesn't. The empath does not walk away at the first sign of trouble. Instead, they cling on. They try and resolve. They don't fight it in the way that a narcissist versus a narcissist would. Instead, the empath, driven by their addiction and the emotional thinking, will, for instance, bend over backwards. So if they have a significant and beyond martyr trait in their cadre, they self-flagellate, trying to accommodate. If they are heavily codependent, the consequence of this is that the narcissist will look to assert control over the empath, and their codependency causes them to pour themselves into the empty hole that is the narcissist. They don't break away. They continue seeking validation for their existence through catering to the narcissist's needs. Other empaths will, as a consequence of their empathic traits, look to solve the problem, reconcile the differences, placate the narcissist, attend to the narcissist's needs, try and get to the bottom, to the truth of what is going on, to try and get back to the golden period. Those behaviours will not be seen where it's narcissist on narcissist action, narcissist versus narcissistic person, or narcissist versus normal. They will either break away, or it will be high conflict very early on, i.e. narc versus narc. The empath does not go down that road. Any retaliation from an empath comes much further. They either, where it's the empathic supernova, as I explained in separate videos, into the devaluation, draw a line in the sand and say enough, or if the supernova doesn't occur, it gets to a cliff fight back situation. Where it's narc on narc, the tempestuous nature of it occurs far earlier than those two events. That doesn't happen with the empath. Indeed, some empaths don't even retaliate or fight at all, and as mentioned, go down the route of conciliation, trying to fix, trying to heal, trying to resolve matters in a conflict-way manner. Invariably, the empath will end up blaming themselves. I must have done something wrong. Why won't it work? How can I make it better? What is it that I keep doing that upsets him? They self-reflect on the matter. Of course, a narcissist would not do that. The empath does. And therefore, the empath remains locked in the relationship with a narcissist for often a very long time. And either there is no retaliatory behaviour of the empath, or, if it does come, it is at a later stage, either by supernova or cliff fight back. Again, distinguishing features between the other categorizations of individuals that interact with a narcissist. So the relationship with the narcissist is one of the key indicators that demonstrates the presence and existence of the empath. Empathic individuals don't shout about the fact that they're empaths. They move quietly, getting on with what they do. Their actions speak for what they are. It goes down to the similar situation as the quote from the late Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Margaret Thatcher, where she talked about being powerful is like being a lady. If you have to say that you are, you aren't. Similarly, those that go around shouting about the fact that I am an empath, particularly as we've seen those that regularly announce, I am a super empath, without any determination of what they actually are, could be mistaken behaviour, but is more likely the behaviour of somebody who isn't an empath at all. Empaths let their actions speak. They move doing their works, caring for people, expressing their compassion, exhibiting decency, being an excellent listener, without reward, fanfare, or herald. Indeed, they are often uncomfortable with that recognition. They don't want it. They don't wear it as a badge of honour. They are certainly proud of what they are, but that pride sits within their empathic traits, and therefore they do not go around shouting and screaming about the fact that they are an empath. They don't appear somewhere and announce it. They may well know that they are, but they're not moved to have to keep proving and demonstrating that that is what they are. There are, of course, those who believe that they are empaths, and they are not. And I will be addressing that in a separate video. Empaths do exist. I know that they do, because I regularly feed upon them. I have spent years ensnaring them. Primarily as intimate partner sources, sometimes as non-intimate sources within my family, friends, former colleagues, existing colleagues, strangers, acquaintances, I am able to spot them, the range of empathic traits, class traits, and special traits that fit together, as I have written about in Sitting Target. Whilst there are many individuals who claim to be empaths and are not, and are indeed those false empaths, empaths do exist. I know because I need them, and all narcissists do, because the empath is the best provider of what we require. The empath is the best provider of the prime aims. You are the easiest to control by virtue of your addiction to us and the behavior of your narcissistic and stronger empathic traits occasioned by the impact of that addiction. You provide us with fuel. You are more likely to react to our provocations, and those that have the Giza cadra have an amplified output with regard to the provision of fuel, which certain narcissists look for in particular. Invariably instinctively, but it is still sought out. You provide a greater emotional output than normals, narcissists, and narcissistic people, and therefore, because we need fuel, you are the ones that provide it to us the best. Hence, we hunt you. With regard to character traits, your character traits can be similar to those in other groupings. But given that it's easier to ensnare you, and you are less likely to object to our commandeering of those traits by pointing out, no, it was me that trained our son to play the piano, not you. It therefore means that although you may have a similar range of character traits to somebody who's a narcissist or narcissistic or a normal, it's easier for us to commandeer them from you. Similarly with residual benefits, they can also be provided by all individuals within the four groupings that I've explained. But because of the empathic nature, the existence of that emotional empathy, and those empathic traits, you are more likely to readily provide those residual benefits to us, making it easier for us to utilize them to our benefit. Empaths very much exist. As a simple proposition, I know, because that is who I target, that is who I feast upon. Those are the individuals that are the easiest to ensnare and keep ensnared for the reasons that I have explained. Of course, I can gain fuel, character traits, and residual benefits from non-empaths, namely normals, narcissistic people, and other narcissists. And indeed I do in certain instances, but they don't come anywhere close to the satisfaction of the prime aims that empaths do. And since I identify those individuals who exist, who provide the prime aims to such a degree, they are clearly the empaths. Accordingly, empaths do exist. They exist as a consequence of the exhibition of a range of empathic traits which are stronger and wider than other categorizations of people. They exist because they have a wider range of emotional empathy than other categorizations of people. They exist because of the form by which their emotional empathy takes in terms of the invisible regulation of it and self-regulation, which is different to that of the other categorizations of people. Empaths exist because they, and they alone, have the addiction to the narcissist, part of the symbiotic relationship between us and you. Furthermore, empaths exist because, as explained, they cater to the provision of the prime aims far more effectively than any other categorization of individual. Empaths exist as evidenced in the way the dynamic operates between us and you, compared to the differing outcomes between narcissists and other narcissists, narcissistic people, and normals. Of course, there are many who claim to be empaths but are not. But empaths certainly do exist for the reasons that I have explained. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.